With this Lotus build, you can make him the best debuffer. And what also makes him a fantastic debuffer is going to be his kit. As starting off with his skill 1, Emit Smoke, this is a fantastic skill 1 as it's an AoE skill that will have 50% of attack and magic attack as damage ratios, with a 50% chance to inflict a 15% reduced mobility debuff on an enemy. And then once you get to this to level 5, the activation rate will be increased all the way up to 55%. Then we have his skill 2, Smoke Explosion. This is another fantastic skill, as what it will do single target damage with a 2-turn cooldown, and the damage ratios are going to be 90% of attack and magic attack. And the added effects of this skill is basically he will then inflict an extended debuff duration by 1 turn on an enemy, and then he'll inflict a reduced damage resistance level 3 debuff on an enemy, but that's not really the biggest point of this. The fact that he can just extend a debuff is the best part of it. And then finally, his special skill, Prison of the Fallen King. This is what really ties him all together as the best debuffer in the game, as this is going to be an AoE special skill that will have damage ratios of 55% of attack and magic attack, and it's the added effects of this skill is really what makes him so good, as he'll inflict a incapacitate level 3 debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, which will be a 50% increased damage taken debuff, which is ridiculous. And then you also have a 50% chance to remove all buffs from an enemy, and then that can be increased all the way up to 60%. And then you'll then have a 50% chance to inflict a reduced speed level 3 debuff on an enemy for 2 turns, which is honestly the best part of this kit, because speed reduction is honestly so broken in this game. And I just wanted to touch on his Unite Attack with Mars, as honestly it's unbelievable how powerful their Unite Attack is. Honestly, it's so good, as on Lotus's side he will inflict a level 3 reduced speed debuff as well, and that's guaranteed, which unlike his special skill, you have a 50% chance to do this. And then on Mars' side, it will then also inflict a reduced all attack level 1 debuff on an enemy for 2 turns if their stamina is 50% or less, or mobility, etc. And this will be a decrease of 23% in attack and magic attack as well. And then you'll also have a 40% chance to inflict taunt on an enemy for 1 turn as well, which is also fantastic. And then we have his passives. His unique passive is a great unique passive, as it just gives him a 12% increase in his magic attack, which is just going to make him do a lot of extra damage. And then his enhanced passive basically will give you a 25% chance to inflict a 10% reduced all attack debuff on an enemy for 1 turn upon attacking. And this works fantastically because with his skill 1 being AoE, as well as his special skill and Unite Attack or Combined Attack as well being all AoE, it means you can proc that pretty often. But once you get into completely max dupes, you can actually increase this all the way up to a 35% chance to inflict a 12% reduced all attack debuff instead, which is honestly amazing. So next up, I just want to cover what are going to be his best gear sets, as his are really unique in comparison to a lot of other characters in this game, especially DPS characters, as essentially Lotus's job is to only apply debuffs. So especially when it comes to arena and also some pretty difficult bosses, the Secret of the Deep Sea set on a 4 set bonus, not a 2 set bonus, is going to be fantastic, as when you use all of this, you'll be able to get a flat 5 speed increase as well as a 5% increased speed buff for 2 turns at the start of a wave, which is going to make you really quick and will allow you to outspeed all of your opponents in arena and also in PvE stuff as well. And then it just, I guess, kind of comes down to what else do you want on him, as you could go for the Traveler's Essentials gear set, as basically when you're afflicted with the status elements, that'll be like stunning, etc., you'll be granted with a 20% speed increase, which is, it's okay, it's nothing too crazy, so you don't necessarily need it. But in turn, when you face off against people like Mars or Rill, who all do have stuns and stuff like that, or someone else that can freeze, then this gear set can be quite useful. And then other gear sets that I'd probably recommend pairing up with the Secret of the Deep Sea 4 set is going to be the 2 set bonus of the Great Merchant's Collection, as you can just get a free 30% defense increase for extra survivability. And then another set you can use for survivability is going to be the Ice Mansion's Remain set. And then when it comes to actual substats for these different gear pieces, the main ones you're going to be looking for are going to be magic attack, so you can help scale off of your unique passive even more to do more damage, as well as defense is going to be great for extra survivability, as other stuff like damage resistance to help with your blocking. Those ones are going to be really fantastic for you to use. And then of course stuff like crit rate and crit damage are also pretty decent, as especially crit damage, because when you're facing off against sort of, I guess, red enemies, you'll be able to crit a lot more often, so you'll be able to do at least a good amount of damage. So next up we have his talents, and let's start with all of his attack talents. And I think the increased magic attack of 7% is going to be really handy, as like I mentioned before, with his unique passive giving him extra magic attack, you can then increase your magic attack even more to then help that increase your magic attack by quite a lot, which is always really good. And then Battle Frenzy is also really good, as it's going to be another reason why you probably want some crit damage substats, as the increased crit rate from this is going to allow you to crit even more. And then for Carvstones, it pretty much doesn't matter, just go for the attack and magic attack one and you'll be golden. Defense talents is pretty simple, just the increased defense, plus the endurance one is just going to make you a lot more survivable, pretty simple. And then for the Carvstone slot, you're just going to want to go for defense, because that's going to give you the biggest bonus. And then for support talents, again, it's pretty obvious, pretty self-explanatory, as swiftness is going to be really good, as when you have less than 2 special points, you'll be able to get a special point +1 buff, as if you're using your ultimate a lot, then you'll be able to gain this bonus quite often. And then the increased damage resistance is also going to be really, really good, so it will help scale with your substats as well, which is going to be really, really handy and make him also tankier. And then for the Carvestone slot, speed is going to be fantastic. It's going to be the one you want the most. So next up we have skill pages, and honestly debuffers are kind of lacking in skill pages, so honestly it doesn't really matter too much which ones you go for. But what I would probably recommend the most is the Cunning Commander, as being able to apply that concentrated attack debuff on an enemy for 1 turn is going to be fantastic for the PvE bosses, as basically concentrated attack will basically allow any of your damage or any of your hits to crit on a guaranteed chance, which again is why you probably want some crit damage substats as well. And plus the extra passive of having a 25% chance to inflict a 2% reduced speed debuff on an enemy for 1 turn upon attacking is also somewhat decent as well, and it somewhat coincides with how his sort of enhanced passive works as well, which is also useful. But if you don't have that, Blooming Talent is probably the next best thing, as you will have a 60% chance to inflict a 10% reduced defense debuff on a random enemy for 2 turns whenever you use your special skill, and that 60% chance is pretty easy to apply as his ultimate is AoE, so you'll be able to do that really, really easily. And then I guess that there's pretty much nothing else in terms of the buffer skill pages. I guess Silent Stone is somewhat decent, as it gives you a defense and endurance increase, so it just makes you more survivable, because so then you can get all your debuffs off of. But honestly I wouldn't really recommend this one too much, as if you don't have Rills or Lotus' skill page, Breath of Darkness is probably the next best thing, as the all attack bonus is going to give you even more magic attacks, so you can do a bunch more damage, so you can then end up running like a slightly more offensive debuffing version of Lotus. And then Mysterious Ancient Book is probably going to be one of the things that pretty much most of you are going to use, because it's just a free 12% damage increase, which is also really, really good. Alright, and then next up we have all of his best teams, and in a team with Lotus, Mars is literally the perfect pairing, as you'd expect, because Mars, it has a united attack with him, and that united attack is probably the best one in the game, if not, it's definitely one of them at least. And Mars as just a solo tank is honestly unbelievable, as his special skill is also really, really good. It gives him a very tanky fortified buff of level 3, which would be 34% damage reduction. And then of course Julius is going to be pretty much the next guy you want, because then you can sort of lean towards the mono blue team, as Julius works fantastically, as he also has a bunch of reductions in mobility and also CCing in his kit, especially with his special skill. But my biggest recommendations would be people like Noelle Silver, as she is just so good, as she supports with crazy amounts of AoE damage. Or you got like the Season 1 Mimosa for more survivability and sustainability, as well as reviving as well, and she works fantastically with Julius, being able to revive him as well, which is really, really good. So then finally we have all of his skill level priorities, and the first thing first is always going to be Prison of the Fallen King, as the buff removal activation rate is going to be really, really handy, as increasing it from 50% to 60% is going to be really, really good. And then I'd recommend Emit Smoke, his skill 1, as you can increase the activation rate by 5% of his 15% reduced mobility debuff, and then after that is skill 2. But if you are actually going to go ahead and use the united attack with Lotus, then obviously I'd recommend probably this to be either first or second. So that is a complete guide on Lotus. He is an unbelievable character, the best debuffer currently in the game, and is going to be definitely one of them for a very long time. But if you've enjoyed this video or it's helped you, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below whether it helped you or not, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.